What's the hardest thing about writing? Well, it's getting started. Maybe you're having a hard time coming up with a story idea, or you're stuck on where to take your story next. If you want a way into a story or a way through, I have 9 story starters to help you. This free PDF is full of story seeds and prompts to get you going. To download your 9 story starters, go to nancypanuccio.com/start. That's Nancy with an I, Panuccio with 2 C's, nancypanuccio.com/start. These scenes are where the protagonist gains insight and takes accountability for her part in what's wrong in her life. It's where the character is forced to confront her own weaknesses, her own culpability. It's where she realizes the extent that she's implicated in what's happened to her. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has a story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and writing coach, and each week we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's begin. In today's episode, I'm going to share 5 must-have scenes to write in your story. Before we get to that, let's define what a scene is. A scene is a self-contained unit of your story. It's a microcosm of your entire plot, meaning each scene is getting your character farther from or closer to the main story goal. Each scene has consequences that need to be resolved sooner or later or build in the scenes that follow. So each scene is a consequence of prior scenes so that the scenes weave together in a tapestry that makes up your story. Plot unfolds at the scene level. It's the beat-by-beat moments where your characters experience and demonstrate the action in real time. Most writers write their story in chapters, but it's far better to write in scenes. Scenes are your structural dividers. One place in time, one main action. When you move to another place and or time, you have a new scene. Chapters are arbitrary dividers. They set the reading pace. They're more strategic in that they give the reader a place to pause, and this helps them absorb what's already happened thus far. So you write your book in scenes and then break it up strategically into chapters later to modulate the reader's experience. Scenes set up the structural pace of your story, which is why you need different types of scenes. Some scenes are more action-driven or they're suspenseful, so they move at a quicker pace. Other scenes are more reflective, so they'll move slower. Some scenes have more intensity, some scenes have less. So you want to avoid scenes that move at the same pace, the same tempo and intensity, scene after scene after scene. So in this episode, I'm going to look at 5 scene types every story should have, whether you're writing a short story, a novel, or memoir. So I'll start by giving you an explanation of each of the 5 scene types, and then I'll give you examples. So let's get right to it. Scene type number 1 is your orientation scenes. For example, your first scenes establish your character's status quo. That's a type of orientation. Orientation scenes come at the beginning of your story to establish your main character's status quo, life as they know it, before they're vaulted out of that into unknown physical or emotional territory, which is Act 2. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about your first scenes. For that, look at episode 192. We talked about your first and final scenes, your bookend scenes. Episode 192, I'll link in the show notes. But you can also use orientation scenes whenever your character passes through a turning point. For example, the midpoint, the point of no return. Now, it could be a crisis or a revelation that propels your protagonist and the story in a new direction. And so the status quo changes. So it's a shift from your character's known world to the new. It's whenever your protagonist has to orient him or herself into a new physical or emotional reality that they've just entered. With orientation scenes that follow a turning point, your character will recommit or reassess or alter their story goal based on what happened previously. So number 1, orientation scenes. Scene type number 2 is your crisis scene. Now, a crisis scene often happens at the end of Act 2. For example, in Revolutionary Road, Frank Wheeler's wife, April, attempts to self-abort her pregnancy, and she's rushed to the hospital where she dies from blood loss. That's the final crisis. But there can also be smaller crises along the way. For example, in Revolutionary Road, the first crisis is a fight April and Frank Wheeler have on the side of the road on the way home from her failed performance in an amateur play. It's a defeat for Frank and a victory for April. Midway through Margaret Atwood's Cat's Eye, the protagonist Elaine gets abandoned by her friends at night in the cold at the bottom of a ravine and nearly freezes to death. So a crisis scene is your protagonist's defeat and your antagonist's victory. The antagonist has more power than your protagonist in the crisis scene. A crisis scene is usually followed by a revelation of some sort or the protagonist recommitting to the story goal. Now, there are other crises that can happen in a story. It's whenever your protagonist experiences defeat and loses hope. It can be that all is lost moment. But ultimately, the crisis results in a breakthrough or a breakdown. In Revolutionary Road, Frank Wheeler's life is shattered when his wife dies. In Cat's Eye, the crisis in the middle of the novel leads to a revelation scene, which then leads to an orientation scene where she's orienting to a new emotional territory, new friends, new awareness, and self-respect, which she hadn't had prior to the crisis scene. Okay, next up, scene type number 3, the revelation scene. These scenes are where the protagonist gains insight and takes accountability for her part in what's wrong in her life. It's where the character is forced to confront her own weaknesses, her own culpability. It's where she realizes the extent that she's implicated in what's happened to her. Okay, on to scene type number 4, suspense scenes. A suspense scene is whenever there is uncertainty about the fate or safety of a character. In this type of scene, the protagonist and antagonist may be on equal footing at the beginning, but preferably the antagonist has an edge and has at least a little more power. In a suspense scene, there's anxiety. Your protagonist isn't sure of the outcome, and neither is the reader. The reader is worried for your protagonist. The tension is high. The antagonist is unpredictable. The stakes for your protagonist are high in a suspense scene. There's some element of danger. The danger could be physical, emotional, or spiritual. I did an episode on danger. It's episode 190, How to Create Page-Turning Tension. Episode 190, I'll link in the show notes. Your suspense scenes keep the reader off balance. It keeps your character off balance. On to number 5, last one, your contemplative scenes. These are slower, more internal scenes in reaction to the story's external events. Contemplative scenes follow a dramatic, suspenseful, or revelation scene where your protagonist evaluates how he or she feels. He or she is evaluating what just happened. They re-examine their goals and they react to defeat or victory. So it's their internal thought and rumination about what previously happened in the scene before. So it's an internal scene between two fast-paced scenes. It's emotional in context, it's slower paced, and there's more interaction with self and setting rather than other characters. Now, other characters may be in the scene, but the real interaction is with self and setting. It's more interior monologue. For example, in Revolutionary Road, after the fight scene, which is a crisis scene, as Frank Wheeler rides his babysitter home in the car, he's alone with his thoughts. He's not interacting with any characters here, but he's contemplating the ramifications of what just happened. Here's the scene. Frank took 2 wrong turns in driving Mrs. Lindquist home. Mrs. Lindquist, leaning against door and dashboard, tried to cover her fear by smiling fixedly in the darkness. She thought he was drunk. And all the way back, alone, he rode with one hand pressed to his mouth. He was doing his best to reconstruct the quarrel in his mind, but it was hopeless. He couldn't even tell whether he was angry or contrite, whether it was forgiveness he wanted or the power to forgive. His throat was still raw from shouting, and his hand still throbbed from hitting the car. He remembered that part well enough, but his only other memory was of the high-shouldered way she had stood in the curtain call with that false, vulnerable smile, and this made him weak with remorse. Of all the nights to have a fight. Okay, so this is all internal. He's thinking about what happened in the previous scene, the fight. He's interacting with the self here. Notice we don't see him interact with the babysitter at all. Sure, he probably said good night to her when she got out of the car, but that's not relevant here, which is why we don't see it. We're in his emotional reaction here. It's a contemplative scene. A great place for this is after a dramatic scene, like a crisis or a suspense scene. Okay, let me walk you through a suspense scene that leads to a crisis, then a revelation, followed by an orientation scene, and then into a contemplation scene. I'll use an example from Cat's Eye. This scene starts in a particular place and time. We have our protagonist Elaine and her antagonist Cordelia. It's the middle of March. Elaine is walking home with Cordelia, Grace, and Carol. They're playing in the snow. They're making snow angels. And then here's where things shift. Here's where the conflict and the tension begins. Cordelia reaches the hill first and runs down it. She tries to slide, but the snow is too soft, not icy enough, and there are cinders and pieces of gravel in it. She falls down and rolls. We think she's done it on purpose, the way she made the snow angel. We rush down upon her, exhilarated, breathless, laughing, just as she's picking herself up. We stop laughing because now we can see that her fall was no accident. She didn't do it on purpose. She likes everything she does to be done on purpose. Carol says, "Did you hurt yourself?" Her voice is quavery. She's frightened. Already she can tell that this is serious. Cordelia doesn't answer. Her face is hard again, her eyes baleful. Grace moves so that she's beside Cordelia, slightly behind her. From there, she smiles at me, her tight smile. Cordelia says to me, "Were you laughing?" I think she means, was I laughing at her because she fell down? "No," I say. "She was," says Grace neutrally. Carol shifts to the side of the path, away from me. "I'm going to give you one more chance," says Cordelia. "Were you laughing?" "Yes," I say, "but just yes or no," says Cordelia. I say nothing. Cordelia glances over at Grace as if looking for approval. She sighs, an exaggerated sigh, like a grown-up's. Lying again, she says, "What are we going to do with you?" We seem to have been standing there for a long time. It's colder now. Cordelia reaches out and pulls off my knitted hat. She marches the rest of the way down the hill and onto the bridge and hesitates for a moment. Then she walks over to the railing and throws my hat down into the ravine. Then the white oval of her face turns up toward me. "Come here," she says. Okay, so she walks down to where Cordelia is standing by the railing. And Cordelia says, "Why don't you go down and get it?" I look at her. She wants me to go down into the ravine where the bad men are, where we're never supposed to go. It occurs to me that I may not. What will she do then? I can see this idea gathering in Cordelia as well. Maybe she's gone too far, hit finally some core of resistance in me. If I refuse to do what she says this time, who knows where my defiance will end? The two others have come down the hill and are watching safely in the middle of the bridge. "Go on then," she says more gently, as if she's encouraging me, not ordering. "Then you'll be forgiven." Okay, so this is a tense scene, and it gets more tense. It's suspenseful because we don't know how far Cordelia will go, and we know this is not a safe situation for Elaine. And indeed, it does get worse. I don't want to go down there. It's forbidden and dangerous. Also, it's dark, and the hillside will be slippery. I might have trouble climbing up again, but there is my hat. If I go home without it, I'll have to explain. I'll have to tell. And if I refuse to go, what will Cordelia do next? She might get angry. She might never speak to me again. She might push me off the bridge. She's never done anything like that before, never hit or pinched. But now that she's thrown my hat over, there's no telling what she might do. I walk along to the end of the bridge. "When you've got it, count to 100, says Cordelia, before coming up. She doesn't sound angry anymore. She sounds like someone giving instructions for a game. Okay, so suspense. But now we're going to move into a crisis scene. I start down the steep hillside, holding on to branches and tree trunks. The path isn't even a real path. It's just a place worn by whoever goes up and down here. Boys, men, not girls. When I'm among the bare trees at the bottom, I look up. The bridge railings are silhouetted against the sky. I can see the dark outlines of 3 heads watching me. Okay, so now she's about to try to fetch her hat, and this is where the crisis begins. My blue hat is out on the ice of the creek. I stand in the snow looking at it. Cordelia is right. It's a stupid hat. I look at it and feel resentment because this stupid-looking hat is mine and deserving of ridicule. I don't want to wear it ever again. I can hear water running somewhere down under the ice. I step out onto the creek, reach for the hat, pick it up, go through. I'm up to my waist in the creek, slabs of broken ice upended around me. Cold shoots through me. My overshoes are filling, and the shoes inside them. Water drenches my snow pants. Probably I've screamed or some noise has come out of me, but I can't remember hearing anything. I clutch the hat and look up at the bridge. Nobody is there. I try to move my feet. They're very heavy because of the water inside my boots. If I wanted to, I could just keep standing here. It's true dusk now, and the snow on the ground is bluish white. The water of the creek is cold and peaceful. It comes straight from the cemetery, from the graves and their bones. It's water made from the dead people, dissolved and clear, and I am standing in it. If I don't move soon, I will be frozen in the creek. I will be a dead person, peaceful and clear, like them. Okay, so she goes on a bit more, and things get much worse before they get better. She even hallucinates that she sees the Virgin Mary, and that is the impetus for her finally to get herself out of this situation. But it's a crisis. In a crisis, the antagonist is the victor. Cordelia is the victor here. So eventually she gets herself back up the hill. She finds herself home. Her mother is a wreck because she's worried about her. And her mother takes care of her. She gives her a warm bath. She gives her tea. She's kept home from school for 2 days. She has a fever. She's in still a state of delirium. Then she goes back to school, and here's the revelation scene. The snow is melting from the lawns and reappears on the floors at school, in the kitchen, at home. Cordelia circles me warily. I catch her eyes on me, considering as we walk home from school. Conversation is artificially normal. We stop at the store for licorice whips, which Carol buys. As we stroll along, sucking in licorice, Cordelia says, "I think Elaine should be punished for telling on us, don't you?" "I didn't tell," I say. I no longer feel the sinking in my gut, the held-back tearfulness that such a false accusation would once have produced. My voice is flat, calm, reasonable. "Don't contradict me," Cordelia says. "Then how come your mother phoned our mothers?" "Yeah, how come?" says Carol. "I don't know, and I don't care," I say. I'm amazed at myself. "You're being insolent," says Cordelia. "Wipe that smirk off your face." I am still a coward, still fearful. None of that has changed, but I turn and walk away from her. It's like stepping off a cliff, believing the air will hold you up, and it does. I see that I don't have to do what she says, and worse and better, I've never had to do what she says. I can do what I like. "Don't you dare walk away on us," Cordelia says behind me. "You get back here right now." I can hear this for what it is. It's an imitation. It's acting. It's an impersonation. of someone much older. It's a game. There was never anything about me that needed to be improved. It was always a game, and I have been fooled. I have been stupid. My anger is as much at myself as at them. 10 stacks of plates, says Grace. This would once have reduced me. Now I find it silly. I keep walking. I feel daring, lightheaded. They are not my best friends or even my friends. Nothing binds me to them. I am free. They follow along behind me, making comments on the way I walk, on how I look from behind. If I were to turn, I would see them imitating me. Stuck up, they cry. I can hear the hatred, but also the need. They need me for this, and I no longer need them. Okay, so it's a revelation scene where she realizes her part in what happened to her. But she's no longer beholden to her friends, especially Cordelia, who's the bully. Okay, the next scene is an orientation scene. It's her new reality. I stopped going to Sunday school. I refuse to play with Grace or Cordelia or even Carol after school. I no longer walk home over the bridge, but the long way around past the cemetery. When they come in a group to the back door to collect me, I tell them I'm busy. They try kindness to lure me back, but I am no longer susceptible to it. I can see the greed in their eyes. It's as if I can see right into them. Why was I unable to do this before? At school, I make friends with a different girl whose name is Jill. She is interested in other kinds of games, games of paper and wood. We go to her house and play old maid, snap, pick-up sticks. Grace and Cordelia and Carol hang around the edges of my life, enticing, jeering, growing paler and paler every day, less and less substantial. I hardly hear them anymore because I hardly listen. Okay, it's an orientation scene. It's her new reality. So the crisis scene was a breakthrough for her. And finally, we have a contemplation scene. She's older now. She's in her 50s. But even though she's an adult, she's still trying to make sense of the crisis that happened when she was 12 or 13. Now, when she was in the ravine, she started to lose consciousness and she hallucinated that she had seen the Virgin Mary. And that's what helped her gather the strength to climb up the hill and go home. In this contemplation scene, she's thinking about how for a long time she used to go into churches and look at statues. And this is a callback to her hallucinating when she was in the ravine about seeing the Virgin Mary. Then I saw the Virgin Mary. I didn't know it was her at first because she was dressed not in the usual blue or white and gold, but in black. And she gives them a little bit more description, and then she says, I could see what these were for. She was a virgin of lost things, one who restored what was lost. She was the only one of these wood or marble or plaster virgins who had ever seemed at all real to me. There could be some point in praying to her, kneeling down, lighting a candle, but I didn't do it because I didn't know what to pray for, what was lost, what I could pin on her dress. And then further down, she thinks about her daughters. So again, she's contemplating years later what happened when she was younger. My daughters, both of them, went through a phase when they would say, so, meaning, so what? It was when the first one hit 12 or 13. They'd fold their arms and stare at me or at their friends or at each other. So, don't do that, I'd say. It's driving me crazy. So, Cordelia did the same thing at the same age. The same folded arms, the same immobile face, the blank-eyed stare. Cordelia, put on your gloves. It's cold out. So, I can't come over. I have to finish my homework. So, Cordelia, I think, you made me believe I was nothing. So, to which there is no answer. Okay, so it's at a slower pace. It's about 3 pages long. It's a brief chapter where she's interacting with herself, with her memory. She's still contemplating the effect that Cordelia had on her. Okay, so let's recap. We talked about 5 different scene types that help vary the tempo, pace, and intensity of your story. Number 1, orientation. These are useful not just for your beginning scenes, but anytime your character arrives at the other side of a turning point and must reorient to a new physical or emotional landscape. Number 2, your crisis scene. Here's where the antagonist is the victor. Number 3, your revelation scenes. These scenes demonstrate character change. Your protagonist gains insight and takes accountability for his or her part in what's wrong in their life. Number 4, suspense. Uncertainty is the lever here. We have to worry for your character. In Cat's Eye, there's emotional danger that leads to physical danger. There's tension as Elaine resists Cordelia's commands, but ultimately, Elaine relents, which leads to a crisis. And number 5, your contemplation scenes. Here's where your character tries to make sense of what just happened. Scenes set up the structural pace of your story, which is why you need different scene types. Some scenes are more intense, some move at a quicker pace, others at a slower pace. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but these are the 5 you want to pay the most attention to. Number 1, orientation. Number 2, crisis. Number 3, revelation. Number 4, suspense. And number 5, contemplative. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And if you know any writers who need some support in their writing, please share this episode or the Writer Unleashed podcast in general. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite listening platform and please leave me a review. Reading how this podcast impacts your writing truly lights me up and helps me create topics for the show. Till next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.